Coming up on this episode of the Morning Star Podcast.
But like that level of trust that God lets me represent him to others, that's a lot of trust that I don't deserve that he gives me. Because I know that I've failed at that before.
Yeah.
I can't think of a specific example. And also, I work here, so I don't want to get fired. But But like, I know that there for sure have been times. I mean, I started working with youth when I myself was a youth. And so I know probably a couple of my first couple sermons probably had some heresy in there.
Sure.
If not a lot. So like that trust that God has given me even to like speak with any semblance of authority on what his word says is an insane amount of trust.
Yeah.
That we have his word written for us to interpret on our essentially on our own. I mean, with others, please interpret with others. Yeah. But that's an insane level of trust he shows us.
Welcome to the Morning Star Podcast, where we engage in meaningful conversations that display God's handiwork and encourage you to live a Jesus-first life. Today's episode takes an in-depth look at a topic that will challenge you to grow closer to Jesus. So let's get started.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Morning Star Podcast. I'm your host today, Jacob Mayhew, and I have with me a familiar face. This, ladies and gentlemen, is Daniel Bennett.
Hello.
You might recognize Daniel. He was on the podcast about a year ago now. Right when you started with Morning Star.
Yeah, couldn't have been longer than a year ago.
It really couldn't have.
Yeah,
you haven't been here that much longer. When we talked last time you were on, we just kind of talked about your life a little bit. You are our director of Middle School Ministries.
Yep.
That's correct. You got a whole year under your belt.
I know, it's experienced now for sure.
You know everything and everyone. You're clearly now perfected. You'll be the best at your job forever, right?
The way I've put it is, if anything goes wrong in middle school, it's my fault. That's my job.
There you go.
But middle schoolers always laugh at that one.
I'm sure they love it because then they get to blame you.
Exactly.
It's great.
Exactly.
So we had you on a year ago just to kind of talk about that. I highly encourage you guys to go back into the archives of whatever platform you're using to listen to that episode. But in that episode, we talked a little bit about 1 Corinthians 13.
Yep.
Do you kind of want to remind listeners a little bit of why we talked about that?
Yeah. So 1 Corinthians 13, specifically verses 4 through 7, they stand out to me because I wrote some thesis stuff on it at the end of my time at Corbin University. Okay. And it kind of was like a culmination of a lot of things that I was like processing through my life. In high school, we had a project where we tried to define what love was. And we said, it's a choice. And I was like, well, that was satisfying for a year or so. And then I was like, I feel like there's more, like I need more than just that answer. And so I ended up looking at 1 Corinthians, where Paul so lovingly lays out for us, love is, and then a list of a bunch of things that it is. And so I was like, I'm going to use that for my definition, and then kind of paired that with the choice language. And so I kind of operate under, if I say I love you to someone, I'm saying I am choosing to love you, and I do that through expressing these things we're going to go over. And so during my master's program, my main view and topic was, is there ever a time that it's okay to not show one of these 15 expressions? And I scoured the Bible and resources and never really got to an answer, as most theses happen, because once these things hit reality, it's really hard to know like what is showing patience towards someone, but then also what's not, and what is loving and what's not loving. And it's just, it starts to be a ball really quick. It gets very complex, and but I love talking about it. And
good.
I have some conclusions we'll get into later.
Excellent. No spoilers.
Yeah, no spoilers.
Got to make it to the end of the episode, and don't just skip ahead to get to them.
I've definitely never done that. That's crazy.
No. So let's go ahead. I want to dive into this and kind of just give you guys an outline listening to what we're going to do is we're just going to kind of walk through the passage and talk about it. But before we get into that, can you kind of provide us a little bit with the surrounding context? Like we're in 1 Corinthians.
Yes.
What's happening? What's going on?
So in 1 Corinthians, Paul is writing to the church in Corinth. And this is, if I remember correctly, Corinthians is one of the churches where there's letters we don't have. And I'm trying to remember if it's the true 2 Corinthians is missing or the true first. I don't know. I think this is his first letter to them. And there's a discussion going on at this portion of the book about spiritual gifts and speaking in tongues and sign gifts and prophecies. And all this is going on. And the point Paul kind of gets to and slows down and focuses on in 13 is about how you shouldn't be fighting about who has the best gift or which gift is more holy or back and forward. What really matters is that you love, that you show the love of Jesus to others, because without that, your gifts are basically pointless. And then after he kind of makes that point here, he then goes right back and to talking to them about things and spiritual gifts and stuff. So we're it's going to be looking at almost an aside that he takes in the middle of an argument about spiritual gifts. And so if that spiritual gift talk excited you, it's mostly about the love part. It's kind of goes left and avoids that conversation. So you can have that for a different podcast.
Perfect. Yeah. Excellent. 1 Corinthians 12, starring Daniel next week.
I need more than a week.
Yes. Awesome. Thanks for setting that up.
Yeah.
Would you mind go ahead and just reading the whole chapter for us? Now, I know in your thesis, you kind of said you focused on 4 through 7.
Yeah.
But it'd still be fun to kind of walk through the chapter.
Exactly.
Get the context.
Yeah.
So
1 Corinthians 13. If I speak in tongues of men and angels, but do not have love, I am only a resounding gong or a clanging cymbal. If I have the gift of prophecy and can fathom all mysteries and all knowledge, and if I have faith that can move mountains, but I do not have love, I am nothing. If I give all I possess to the poor and give over my body to hardships so that I may boast, but do not have love, I gain nothing. Love is patient. Love is kind. It does not envy. It does not boast. It is not proud. It does not dishonor others. It is not self-seeking. It is not easily angered. It keeps no record of wrongs. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices with the truth. It always protects, always trusts, always hopes, always perseveres. Love never fails. But where there are prophecies, they will cease. Where there are tongues, they will be stilled. Where there is knowledge, it will pass away. For we know in part, we prophesy in part. But when completeness comes, what is in part disappears. When I was a child, I talked like a child. I thought like a child. I reasoned like a child. When I became a man, I put the ways of childhood behind me. For now we see only a reflection, as in a mirror. Then we shall see face to face. Now I know in part, then I shall know fully, even as I am fully known. And now these 3 things remain: faith, hope, and love. But the greatest of these is love.
awesome. Thanks, Daniel.
Yeah.
It's like audio Bible with Daniel Bennett.
Hey, there we go. Next week. No.
Yeah, the whole Bible, all 66.
Oof. Technically doable without sleep. But yeah.
Who needs that?
Yeah.
I do.
But yeah, you can kind of see how there's a bit of a discussion going on about tongues.
Yeah.
But that's not what he's talking about. We're talking about that compared to those, like love is, it's never ends. It will go on even throughout heaven and being with Jesus. Like love will be there. Now we know in part, we speak in part.
Yeah.
But then,
So that's the never fails, is that love's never stopping.
Yeah. It's the love of Jesus will be around forever, has been around forever, is reliable. Jesus is always there.
Because when I think of fails, my first instinct is like, it will never go wrong. Like it will never not achieve what it's trying to do. Right.
Interesting.
And so, I mean, he kind of adds on to that in the context.
Yeah.
So you would say that love never fails here is not necessarily saying that love will never will always accomplish the goal.
Well, then we'd have to figure out what the goal of love
It's
is
true.
to know whether or not it succeeds.
Yeah.
But I don't know necessarily if I'd say love has a goal other than, I don't know. That becomes a very deep question about like, is there a goal of God loving us beyond us loving him? And then there's a goal. Is there a goal of us loving others other than them loving him? And I don't know.
Okay. Yeah. Interesting thoughts. But let's start with the top. We're reading along in the NIV. So if you're not multitasking and actually just sitting down and listening to the Morning Star podcast, first off, bless you. Thank you.
Yeah.
But if you want to follow along, NIV is going to be the easiest just so that you have the exact words we got. But I don't think there's really any significant.
No, they're pretty darn solid in this passage.
Perfect. So if I speak in the tongues of men or angels, but do not have love, I'm only a resounding gong or a clanging cymbal. And you talked about that as being like,
hey, you could speak in tongues and do all this, whatever this looked like, the tongues of angels and men and prophecies. And if you're not showing love, what's the point? Right? It's kind of like that. If if you gain the whole world but lose your soul, like who cares? So I think it's almost like a warning to, if you're so focused on the charismatic spiritual gifts, but you aren't showing the love of Jesus, then are those really, is that really a thing? Like, who cares if you can speak Enochian? If you're not showing love to your neighbor and like speaking about Jesus, you know?
Yeah, that kind of seems, those first two verses seem to be like spiritual gift stuff.
Yep.
The one that kind of gets me, that I find interesting, is like, if I have a faith that can move mountains, but do not have love, I'm like, how do you even like be that person? Like, how do you have that much faith in God who loves us, but don't actually have love?
Yeah. It reminds me of a parable that's been coming up again and again this last month, of the unforgiving servant who Jesus is telling the story of a servant who owes, let's just say, $14 trillion to the king. And the king is like, hey, pay me back. And he's like, I literally can't. And he like weeps and he's on his knees and he's like, please forgive me. Please forgive this debt. Take it away. And the king says, all right, you're forgiven of this debt. Go and be free. And then he turns around, goes out the front door, and another servant owes him like $5. And he's just like, pay me back right now. And like pushes him, I imagine he like pushes him against the wall, starts to choke him out, like, give me the money. And he's like, I'll pay you back literally tomorrow. And he's like, no, right now. And then the king hears about this and goes, you horrible person. I forgave you so much. How dare you essentially not forgive the small debt? And so then the king does make him a slave. And like, how do we end up being this person who has such faith in God, but then doesn't show love to those around us? I think it can happen. I mean, that's kind of what I see happening in that parable, is this guy who is he's forgiven and he's been given this grace, but then he doesn't let it affect his heart. He doesn't show that same forgiveness and love to the guy who owed him $5. And so I think that's a warning there of like, hey, just because you have faith in God doesn't mean that your faith is alive necessarily. Like, and if your faith isn't alive,
it kind of reminds me of almost like, show me your faith without works and I'll show you my faith with works in James. Right? That the statement of faith without works is dead. I mean, it's kind of the same point.
Yeah,
right?
it's kind of the same point. Like, you could have this crazy faith, but if you're not, I mean, we're about to go into a section that talks about love, and Jesus loves us and God loves us and we show love to others, and the greatest commandment is to love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. And if those are our greatest commandments and you're not doing those, then the rest of your faith kind of falls by the wayside, because the main thing is to show love towards others and to be loved and show love to God. Like,
Yeah.
and then the rest of your faith is important. Don't get me wrong.
Yes.
Like you have to do the rest of the faith too. But kind of the point Paul's making here is, if all these arguments are going on in the Corinthian church about like, oh man, yeah, but I have this gift. Well, but I have this gift. Well, have you seen my faith? Well, look at my faith.
Yeah.
And Paul's like, dude, love each other. Like, step one,
Yeah.
don't worry about who can speak what and who can prophesy what and who can love each other, and let the rest flow from the love you have for God and for each other. So yeah,
Okay.
Mhm.
Okay.
that's kind of my
Interesting.
thoughts on that.
Yeah. No, that's good. That's good. That's important. And I think he kind of circles it back to that thought in the end. But it's kind of neat in the way he just writes this. I'm just noticing where it's like, he said, love is important, love is important, love is important. But he's like drilling into you. And then you kind of get to that point. If you're listening to this, it's like, okay, well then explain to me what the heck you mean by love.
What do you mean by love?
Yeah, exactly. We have verse 3. If I give all I possess to the poor and give over my body to hardship that I may boast, but do not have love, I gain nothing.
Yep.
That kind of feels similar.
Yeah, it's kind of similar. It reminds me of like prosperity gospel or a faith or a works-based gospel, where if all you do is like, well, look at how much money I donated, look at how much work I did, and then if God's like, I don't know you, like you never had a relationship with Jesus, like, like I just, man, my heart really goes out because people who find themselves in those churches or in those religions where it's work-based, they have such a desire to earn salvation. And like, I want to earn it. I want to work for it. I want to make my way. But you can't. Jesus already did it for you.
Yeah.
Like, there's no more work to be done. But like, I see it is faith in a sense of like, man, I really want to work hard. I really want to earn this. I really want to make God happy. And it's like, he wants to know you, and he wants you to know his son. And out of that comes the good works. The good works aren't going to get you to God. And so that's what I kind of see there with like, if I give everything I have to the poor and I do hard labor all day, but I'm not showing love to people. Like, I imagine a bitter worker, right?
Yeah.
Just like, well, I'm giving to the poor. So it's like, okay.
Yeah.
And like, you don't love the poor. You're just giving money because you feel obligated. And that's not the same thing.
You can't just bequeath all your possessions to charity in your will and call it a day.
And be like, done.
Yeah.
Like, that's not, is that really showing love?
Yeah.
Yeah.
As an element of, we would say it is loving to give to the poor.
Yeah.
But when you're not doing it for that motive.
If you're doing it out of obligation or so that you may boast and go tell people
That's
about
true.
it. I think about when Jesus sees the Pharisees come in with giant bags of pennies and pour them all into the coffers and make big loud noises and like, look at how much money I'm giving to the church.
Yeah.
And then he's like, that's basically worthless. And then a widow with 2 pennies to her name gives them both. And he says, she's given more because it was out of that love, not out of everybody look at me, look at how much money I can give.
Reminds me of the Sermon on the Mount, in which Jesus says, so when you give to the poor, do not let your right hand know what your left hand is doing, so that your giving may be in secret.
Yeah.
So that your Father who sees in secret may reward you.
Yeah.
A lot of emphasis on the
secret.
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 Hush.
Secret.
Hush, hush.
Hush. You're not doing this to gain or to be boastful.
Yeah.
You do it out of love. And if you're not doing it out of love, you're not gaining anything. Yeah.
All right. So then the big question, what is love?
Baby, don't hurt me.
I do want to, before we even start delving into the, like, I know I've heard there's multiple Greek words for love. Like, what's going on that we might be missing in English with that word love before we even get to how Paul describes it?
Well, when I dove into the Greek a year ago, or a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, really. Oh my goodness. Time flies.
Yeah.
This is agape.
Okay.
Throughout this whole section.
The Greek word for love in this passage is agape.
For love. I believe. I'm pretty sure.
I think that's correct.
I'm tempted to go double check, but I'm going to go with my gut.
Power forward.
And yeah, it's agape throughout. And it's like the love of God. It's his love towards us. This isn't eros. This isn't, passionate, like, ooh, she's cute. Like this is the like pure love of God. And it's the love we're called to have towards God and to others. We're called to be a reflection of Jesus and love in this manner. It's agape. It's
Okay.
the one that's used the most in the Bible.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So the answer to what is love is kind of technically agape.
Yeah.
We can answer the song finally.
Yes. What is love? Agape.
Yep. Yeah.
There you go.
Release a cover.
Thanks.
All right. So love is, let's just take these one at a time.
Yeah.
Love is patient.
I wish that Paul put this farther down the list instead of right in your face.
It would be ironic to make you wait for it.
It would be. Yeah. When I led a Bible study through these 15 expressions, and I actually did patience like third or fourth because I didn't want the icebreaker, hello, nice to meet you, to be, all right, let's talk about how patient you're being.
Yeah.
Yeah. So many things come up with patience. I mean, we all feel it as soon as someone starts talking about it. It's like, oh man, I should be more patient. I just think of sitting in traffic behind a red light.
Sure. Yeah.
Or, like the want to speed to get somewhere quicker and faster. And I mean, a lot of it is cultural. We live in a culture that's very fast paced, very on the dime, very just like forward, go, go, go. We're very punctual. We're very on point. So patience is hard.
Yeah.
Patience is hard. And I think especially in the realm of showing somebody love through patience. Again, I take this as my definition to say, if I say I love you, Jacob.
Thank you.
That means I'm making a commitment to be patient with you or patient towards you. That makes, even with just this one, we're not even getting to the other ones yet. That's already a bigger commitment than a lot of people want to make to the people around them. Like to look at your sibling and say, like, oh, I may not always like you, but I'll always love you. Well, that means you're going to be patient.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
I don't want to be patient though. I want it now. Or, if I'm not in your room. No, I'm in your room. No, I'm not in your room.
Sure.
No, I am. No, I'm not. No, I'm in. Like those little things. There's so many examples of where we say we love someone, but then we're not patient with them. And so under this definition of to love someone is to be patient, man, that's already a high bar that Paul is setting.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know how many times I find myself being like, oh, I really don't want to be patient right now. Can we just get to the point? Can we just move on? I especially think of like I don't know. This one just is so broad and yet so specific to so many times. I think siblings, I think significant other, I think coworkers, I think about driving is a huge example that I will use all the time because I find driving is where we dehumanize the most. Oh, they're out to get me. Well, hey, maybe wait another red light.
Yeah.
And you'll still be fine. It gets so hard. And the fact that it's first and right off the bat is just difficult. Because which then to bring it to my thesis question, is there ever a time that you're allowed to stop being patient?
Yeah.
And if you think about that question, that sounds like like you already know the answer. Like, can I ever stop being patient?
Yeah.
That's kind of not what patience is.
Yeah.
And the conclusion that I kind of came to that will be for most of these is there might be a time where maybe you're not ending your patience, but you may have to like change something or
act urgently.
Yeah. That doesn't mean you've like shattered your patience. But what I would ask is, I would say we're probably not being patient enough. That's my conclusion on most of these is we're probably not doing it enough. And patience, I think, is just, it's difficult. Another thing that came up a lot when I was researching this was the idea of boundaries. And that'll make more sense as we get farther because some of these have to do exactly with like setting boundaries with people.
Yeah.
And my question there is like, are you setting a boundary because you're not being patient with them? and they're just taking up a lot of your time? Or is this like an actual safety thing? Or is it keeping you from doing like an obligation or a job? Or do you just would rather not be in this conversation anymore?
Yeah.
And so you're like, I need to put up a boundary. It's like, actually, you could just be more patient and give them more time to talk or hang out.
Is it just getting in the way of what you want, or is it actually getting in the way of your well-being?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's another huge thing that will probably be repeated in the next couple of them.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Because love is kind. That's very similar.
Because there's next, love is kind.
Yeah.
You have the same thing. With kindness, the big thing I came to is the difference between being nice and being kind. And our culture is so nice. We're so nice to each other. We're very, very nice. That's one of the things Europeans say about us all the time is like, wow, Americans are so nice. We're not that kind, though. I was looking at I just watched random YouTube videos for fun, because who doesn't? And I was recently on a kick about looking at different like regional cultures of the United States, and the Pacific Northwest is known for being the least kind.
Really?
Yeah, I think it's probably all the rain. But like genuinely, I even heard someone said like on the east side, people are mean, but they're kind. You know, your car breaks down, people will pull over and they'll swear at you, call you an idiot, but they're helping you change your tire as they're doing it.
Yeah.
Right? Like they're mean, but they're kind. And then apparently over here in the Northwest, we're very, very nice, but we're not kind. We'll drive by someone who's broken down and we'll be like, oh, that really sucks for them. And then we'll keep on driving. Right? We're very good with niceties. Like, hey, I hope you have a really good day that I'm not a part of. And like that kindness aspect gets lost. And so love isn't just nice. It doesn't just do the things that are societally like, oh, you got to be nice to people. It's kind. It's a deeper like care for someone. It's caring about what they're saying, caring about their life. Being kind to someone is like you go above and beyond. You care about them more than yourself. It again kind of comes into that sort of patience boundaries you're talking about. Yeah. Is it keeping you from what you want to do, or is it actually like, would it be kind to invest in this person? And the most recent thing I was reading about the difference between kindness and niceness, and kindness in a Christian sense, was that kindness can also be harsh. And that's kind of that idea of like with like a child is, I'm not going to let you play in the street. And you're thinking I'm being really mean right now, but I'm actually just showing you a strong kindness, like a harsh kindness where I'm not going to let you run in the street. Yeah. And I will ground you if I have to, because I'm going to protect you. And like, so there's kindness there. And so that was one thing where it's like, okay, well, if we're being loving to everybody and loving is being kind, does that mean I have to be kind all the time? Yeah. Is there a time I can stop being kind? And again, kind of a non-answer. There'll be times where you'll need to act urgently. You'll need to like make a change. Yeah. But we're probably not being kind enough. And so as far as showing love to people, being kind to them, probably not doing it enough. And we should again check, is it just because I'm uncomfortable? Yeah. Or is this actually like a danger to me? I think of, especially with kindness, like, oh, what if I'm giving money to someone and they're taking advantage of me? It's like, well, the level of kindness it's going to differ situation to situation. First off, are you giving enough to put yourself into that situation? Yeah. Because if you're not in that situation, maybe you're not giving enough, right? Like that idea, well, someone, I'm being so kind to them and they're taking advantage of me. It's like, well, then you're showing good kindness. Kindness could be stopping, could be providing a different resource like time and maybe help rather than just money. Could be providing food, could be paying for financial lessons, or like the kindness isn't supposed to stop, but maybe that way you're showing kindness needs to change depending on situation. So again, is there a time you can stop being kind? No. Yeah. Yeah.
You just might not.
Because maybe completely pulling out of that person's life is the kindest thing you can do.
Yeah.
But again, check, is it for your comfortability or is it actually for like safety? Actually for like a real needed break, needed split from that person. Yeah.
There's something interesting that I'm kind of noticing a pattern on. But I want to get through the next one, and then I think I have a question.
Awesome.
Yes, because I think it ties into the next one.
Good. The next, and this might even help you.
Yes.
So the next ones are, it does not envy, it does not boast, it is not proud. And then the one after the next one says it's not self-seeking. So these are 4 of them that each of them we could dive into the etymology and the slight differences of the words and like what this means and that means. But I can summarize for you.
Sure, yeah.
Don't be selfish.
Oh, good to know.
Yeah. Love seeks others. It's not inward focused, it's others focused. I mean, even if you just rattle those off again, love does not envy. It doesn't want what other people have. It doesn't want to steal them. It does not boast. It's not all about, oh, look at me and what all I've done. Because that's self-focused. It's not proud. It's not puffing itself up and, hey, everybody, look at me. And then over there, it's not self-seeking. That just seals the deal right there. Like you're not focused on yourself. You're focused on that person. Which again, then making this your definition of love. If I say I love my wife, that means I'm going to put her needs before mine.
Yeah.
If I'm going to say that I love the students that I work with, which I do, that means I'm going to focus on them, that they have a good time playing dodgeball, and not that I just destroy them every time.
Sure.
Right? Like, and that's a silly example, but like it's real. That way, you know, when they do get me out, I'm not going to be a sore loser about it because I want them to enjoy that experience and focused on that they are having a good time playing the games, that they're listening to the message, that they're having a good small group time. You know, I might write really good theological small group questions, but if they need to talk about something that's going on at home, that's the priority.
Yeah.
And so this showing love towards others, it's towards others. And this is like 4 different ways of basically saying, stop being selfish.
Yeah, sure.
Focus on the other person. Yeah.
What I find interesting is you can argue patience and kindness are actions.
Yeah.
Action words. Envy, pride, they seem to be more heart words. But then that kind of butts up against love because if you say love is a choice,
and
then that's implying love is an action.
Yeah.
But then you have these heart words. So what's going on there? Is love a condition of the heart? Is it a condition of actions? Like am I drawing a false dichotomy?
Yeah, it's interesting because what I focused on was the actions associated with the heart. So like with pride, that's very much a heart situation.
Sure.
But it leads to actions. And so out of the heart, the mouth speaks. And so if you are proud, boastful, envious, that's going to show up in your actions. And so how to have that not show up in your actions is to change your heart. And so, yes, it's heart. It's also action. It's kind of both. I still use this as my definition for like showing love towards people. But yeah, there definitely is a heart component to this. One of my conclusions, here we go to another one. So you can't just get to the end because there's peppered throughout. One of my conclusions that whenever I do a sermon on these, it's this: you can't do this.
Okay.
We're 3 in and you already can't do this. There's 15 total. I guess technically we're like 5 or 6 in because I clumped them. But one of my conclusions is you can't do this. There is no way that you can love someone this way on your own power, by yourself, with your broken human heart. The only way that this is possible is through God's love working through you. And an analogy that I stole from somewhere is like your love is this little shot glass full of water, and it gets refilled every morning just by waking up. And then you wake up and you say, "Good morning, wife," and you're out. Right? Like, that's it.
Yeah.
Like, you've now used all your love.
Yeah.
Or maybe you help a stranger. Boom, that's it. Now you don't have any love for your kids, right? Like,
Yeah.
it's out of your love. You're going to run out so fast. But God has an Olympic swimming pool,
Sure.
if not more. Like,
Yeah,
he's got
an
the
ocean.
ocean. He's got an infinite amount of love just sitting, waiting for you. Please tap into this and shower my love. You know, if you're holding this big giant bucket of God's love, you know, you're just walking around, it's sloshing over on everybody. Everyone's like, that idea of if you try to love out of your little shot glass, and some people naturally, they may even have a drinking glass of water.
Sure.
You know, they're saints, man.
Yeah.
But again, you're not going to make it through the whole day with that. This type of love, this type of heart is not natural. It is not possible to like, patient, kind, not envious, not boastful, not proud. Oh, I can do that. No, you can't. Not by yourself. You have to rely on God. Another analogy was my mom was a couponer. And at one point we had 170 boxes of cereal and a jar of pickles that she got for 20 cents. They changed the rules after that. Because and the jar of pickles was so it got the number out of the negative, because they won't pay you to take 170 boxes. And we had so much cereal, we were giving it to everybody who came over. You get a box of cereal, you get a box of cereal. We won the Awana donation for food because we had so much. We just threw it everywhere. And God's love is the same way. If you are just full of God's love, you're going to want to give it away. You have too much, you can't contain it in yourself. It's going to go to anyone you come in contact with, to your neighbor, to your loved ones, to your family. And so that's one of the conclusions I got from this is, man, looking at this list, I cannot do this.
Yeah.
I cannot do this on my own. It's got to be through God's love, which makes sense that it's agape.
Yeah. Yeah. So like, what does that look like? Like, let's say I've run out of my own love.
Yeah.
Like, I'm like, do I just go throughout my day and just expect God will override like obviously that's the extreme.
Sometimes.
Yeah. But like, what does it look like to live out of God's love in that way?
It's so easy to say, and it's so hard to do.
Yeah.
I even struggle with this constantly.
Okay.
How can I love out of God's love? And you can't do it without filling yourself with God's love first. So, as cliche as it is, reading his word.
Yeah.
Listening to Christian podcasts, listening to the Christian radio, also sometimes listening to secular radio because you got to know what the kids are listening to. Like it's throughout the day. One that's missed a lot, I think, is surrounding yourself with fellow believers that can then help you go and speak to non-believers. There's kind of this call to do both and to be in community with believers, church, but then also being out in your community with people who don't know Jesus. And so the way to live out God's love is you have to be filled with God's love. And to do that, you need to experience his love.
Yeah.
Being in worship, being in prayer, being in Bible reading, even maybe just, we were talking about it earlier, scripture memorization, so that, you know, even if maybe it's this verse in your mind, you know, you come up against someone and you're having a really hard time being patient with them, and it pops into your head, hey, love is patient.
Yeah.
And then let me tell you, that's happened to me once or twice. I'm like, dang it. No, I don't want to be patient right now. So sometimes it is God just overrides and takes over. But like, it is so hard to describe. That the times that it has happened have normally been out of the blue, when I'm least expecting it, when I least want to love, and then circumstance thrusts it upon me, and then, you know, that little reminder, hey, love isn't selfish.
Yeah.
It's not focused on you. It's focused on them and what they need right now. It's like, dang it. And, you know, if you're talking about marriage, if you're loving them and they're loving you back, both are fully focused on the other, then both are taken care of.
Yeah.
And that's why I think you need that balance of Christian friends who will pour into you as you pour into them, keeping each other afloat, to then let you go out into the world, into the supermarket, into your job, into like being part of the community and living out God's love is possible only if you're full of God's love, which you can get from other believers. You can get from going straight to the scripture, straight to God through prayer. Yeah. It's crazy how these high, I don't know, I wouldn't even say high concept, but like these deeper dives into passages end up coming right back to, spend time with God.
Yeah. Yeah. Kind of basic, kind of important.
He's a very relational God.
Yeah.
I don't know exactly where we're at with time, but one other conclusion that I won't make it wait till the end, though typically I do. And that is that all of these things are also how God shows his love towards us. And that kind of flip of the script, because I came at it looking at, how do I love others? How do I love others? How can I love others? Wait a second. God is patient with me.
Yeah.
Extremely patient with me.
Yes.
He has shown me so much patience. From that, I can show patience. God has been so kind to me. Not only did he save me, but he also I have some nice things and a wife and a family who loves me. Like not everybody has that.
We're alive.
We're alive. We're breathing.
Yeah.
Like it's a beautiful day outside, or maybe even the rain is like a gift because it's a beautiful place that we live. So God's showed me so much kindness. I can show kindness. And one, I'm going to jump way ahead because it's one that is a big sticking point for quite a few people. And that is that love keeps no record of wrongs. What the heck?
Yeah.
And that idea, to know what's going on in the Greek, because this one I was like, I gotta know.
Yeah.
What is this? They use a banking term that essentially is like ledger. Like love doesn't keep a ledger, like a black book of all the things. It doesn't hold it against your account, which sounds like the exact same language of Jesus's sacrifice for us.
Yeah.
Is it wipes our account of sin. He takes on the debt. And so so when we hear keeps no record of wrongs, we think almost like, oh, it's as if nothing ever happened. It's like, no, it's that it's not being held against you. God isn't sitting up there with this book going, all right, so you've sinned 378 times, so you need to do, I know, right? Today, this hour. So you need to do 378 penances. And this is where sometimes, especially if you look at the older Catholic Church, they fell into this where they're like, well, I've sinned this many times, I need to confess this many times or do this many things. And it's this very natural idea that makes sense to us of like, oh, I've sinned against God. I need to do something good for God to make up for it. But kind of like we talked about earlier, there's nothing you can do. It's just his love for you. He's already paid that cost, which is freeing to a scary degree.
Yeah.
Because he knows me so much and still loves me. And he knows everything I did. He has it written down. He just doesn't keep it. Like he doesn't hold it against me. He doesn't keep it in a book. And then I look at how I love others. And so quickly and easily, I'm a rememberer. I remember what you said. I remember what you did. I remember I can hold a grudge like no other while smiling. But this call of like not holding it against their account, so I grew up with two sisters. And they know how to push my buttons, and I know how to push their buttons back. And very consistently, we'd get to this point where it's like, well, you've done the dishes 4 times in the last week, and I've done it 5 times. So you need to do the dishes.
Yeah.
And sometimes we get that way when people have slighted us. Well, okay, you've been mean to me 4 times this week. I can be mean to you 5 times, right? And it's almost like this allowance to get people back, hold stuff against them. But that's not love.
Yeah.
Love is, as Jesus so aptly put it, turning the other cheek.
Yeah.
It's, I'm not going to retaliate for this. And again, when it comes into that conversation of, is there ever a time where I can keep a record of wrong? It's kind of that idea of you have to forgive eventually. You have to forgive. but that doesn't, like, you don't just forget, you know? And so but you don't hold it against them. It's kind of this idea of, if you are forgiving someone for something, you're giving up your right to hold it against them, right? Like, well, you broke my arm in the 3rd grade. Like,
yeah, sure.
It's like, well, you forgave me for that, so why are you bringing it up?
Yeah.
Right? And it's like, well, because I'm not going to put my arm back in the vice press. Like, you know, you can use your wisdom and be wise. My best example is one of my good friends. I broke his ribs.
Sure.
He fell on my knee.
Okay. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
No. I'm not a very imposing figure. No, he fell on my knee and it cracked a couple of his ribs. And I asked for forgiveness and he forgave me. The ribs are still broken.
Yeah.
Right. And it's kind of that idea, even like with God forgiving our sin, the rib is still broken. You know, if some people ask, well, if God's forgiven me for this sin, then why do I still have this consequence? Well, the rib is still broken. Like, Can God forgive a murderer? Absolutely. They're still going to be in prison. They're still going to serve a sentence. There's still like, that doesn't just go away because because you've been like, it's forgiven. Like, but, you know, even like families have forgiven people who've murdered people in their family. Doesn't get them out of prison.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, that's an extreme example, but I just think about in our daily lives, how many times do we fear that if we offer that forgiveness, it's going to absolve them of like any sort of consequence.
Yeah.
When it's like, I mean, if you're the one who would be giving that consequence, it kind of does absolve them of that, because you're giving them that forgiveness.
Yeah.
But if they've done something illegal against you, turn them in, like follow the laws. But even in the midst of that, you can still show that forgiveness. And if it's, say, like within a relationship and they've completely broken like all of the trust, you don't still have to be best friends.
Yeah.
Like, you can still forgive them without like needing it to go back to how it was. And so much of this passage gets so detailed heavy, but I come back to, I think maybe we're not forgiving enough.
Yeah.
Maybe we're a little too self-centered. Maybe we're not patient enough. Maybe we're not kind enough. And I think a lot of it comes down to comfortability versus this love that God's calling us, that he shows us, that we're supposed to show others. It's not comfortable. It's not comfortable. Like, needing to be patient with someone is not fun. Focusing on others above yourself is not fun. I love focusing on myself, right? Like, it's natural. It's, look out for number one. And it's not fun to focus on others. I mean, actually, it can be very fun. Like, there's so many aspects of this passage that we haven't even touched on. Love is not easily angered.
Yeah, that was the one I wanted to bring up next.
Man.
Easily angered.
Yeah.
So that's not necessarily love is never angry.
Yeah.
But like it, and that's a very hard one.
That's a very hard issue. Look at God's patience with the Israelites.
Yeah.
Over and over again, they spit in his face, worship other gods, completely forget everything he's done for them, and yet he doesn't abandon them as his people. Like, they're still his people. He doesn't just wipe the slate clean and try again with the Amorites. Like, he just he stays with them, and like, it takes them years of ignoring him and spitting in his face before he does anything about it, or before he does anything drastic about it. Like, I think of the Judges cycle and how it says, and at that time, people did what they wanted. They did what was good in their own eyes. And for like long spans of years, God just kind of lets them do it. And he's patient and he's not easily angered.
Yeah.
But after a while, he sends a judge and says, hey, knock it off. Knock it off for consequences. Then they don't knock it off. And consequences. Wow. Like, it's pretty, like, even Old Testament stuff, when God does things that we're like, oh my goodness, that looks like he's very angry. It's like, yes, he is angry. Look at how patient he was before. I even think about, you talk about the fact that we're alive.
Yeah.
He said to Adam and Eve, if you eat this, you will die.
Yeah.
They ate it. They didn't die. Like, they weren't instantly smote.
Yeah.
Like, that already is this patience and kindness and like not easily angered. He's angry, rightfully so, but he doesn't let it like boil over, until Tower of Babylon. And that's a long time before we get there. And then he says, you know what? I'm not going to do this again. I'm not going to wipe the earth again. And then, well, at least specifically with water. And then, I don't know, over and over again, we see God's unending patience. Even right now with Jesus, has been gone for 2,000 years. He says, I'm coming back soon. And it even says, I cannot remember which book, but he says that he waits so that more can come to him. It's essentially like, well, why hasn't Jesus come back yet?
Yeah.
So that more people can know him. So that more people can like the disciples, when Jesus went up, they were expecting it like within the hour.
Yeah.
They just sat there.
That's true.
They just sat there looking up, and it took an angel being like, guys, go,
Yes.
go live your lives. Go tell people about him. Don't sit here on this hill waiting.
Yeah.
And so like the patience of God, even to wait to make things right, to remove pain, sin, and death from the world entirely, he's putting that off, which is one of his deepest desires, is to make everything right. He's patient and he's waiting so that more can come to him. And I find it interesting that it doesn't say like, love is not angry. I think anger in itself is not inherently a sin, but it can really easily cause sin, very easily. And I think like a quick temper, like a very, very quick, riled up, immediate temper, like that doesn't immediately make you a sinner, but like that's something to really be watchful for and try to tame as best you can, because like to show someone love is it's this not easily angered is kind of the like counterpoint to patience.
Yeah.
They work together. Just when you are angry, make sure you're not sinning in your anger. Yeah. Make sure the anger isn't a selfish anger.
Sure.
Because if he didn't hit home enough, not boastful, not proud, not self-seeking. Like if it's anger on behalf of others, there might be action that needs to take place. Like you may need to step in to protect someone. You may need to like speak your piece and let them know this is not okay. But like don't sin in your anger.
Yeah.
And there's many different sins in anger could lead to, which could be, I don't know, murder.
Sure.
It's the first one I think of.
Well, yeah. I mean, Jesus directly calls anger murder in the Sermon on the Mount.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
If you hate another, then you've already murdered him in your heart.
Yeah.
And so there's definitely in that, anger can lead to, I feel like I'm a Jedi right now. Anger can lead to hate, and hate leads to
yes.
But it's a very real thing. Anger can very quickly spiral out of control. And again, classic example, Jesus was angry at the temple.
Yeah.
And this was kind of like a funny meme I saw, but like it actually highlights this element of when Jesus flipped the tables of the temple, he braided a whip, meaning he took the time in his anger to sit down and braid a whip. And so the meme was kind of like Jesus walks into the temple, sits down, starts braiding. His disciples, Jesus, what's going on? Temple's infested. Right?
Yes.
Just that calm, deliberate braiding, giving all that. It's literally a long fuse that he's slowly like, and like that's an interesting picture. I don't know if Jesus actually sat down and braided it or if there just was one there.
Sure.
But that idea of like, and even in flipping the tables, it was, you are turning my Father's house into you're defiling it.
He was preaching at the same time.
As he's preaching, he's literally preaching. He also isn't hurting anybody. He's hurting their stuff and their livelihood. But like he is rightfully angry in that you are defiling this place of worship. And so sometimes there's action, but even within that action, you have to be really careful to not let it become selfish or become self-righteous rather than actually righteous. Yeah. So anger is nuts.
I've always found it interesting that like when they're trying to find charges to arrest Jesus on, they never bother to reference the temple.
They don't mention the temple at all.
Like just like, oh yeah, he did such a good job of not like actually hurting anyone.
Yeah.
That they're like, they didn't even bother to try that as a charge.
No. And if they did, it'd be like, really?
Yeah. Like,
okay, bud.
yeah, exactly.
Tell me, what tables did I flip?
Yeah. Yep.
What was being sold on them?
Yep.
Where?
So for the sake of time, I think we can do kind of one more.
Okay.
Do you have a personal favorite? Otherwise, I have one that I think is interesting.
Okay. Hit me with it.
It always protects. It always trusts. Always hopes, always perseveres, but that always trusts.
Love always trusts.
Yes, that's a tough one. Because I mean, we talk about keeping no record of wrong, but even in that, you're like,
there's a rememory. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, am I supposed to trust someone when it's like, okay, yeah, you've been taking my money and using it to, inappropriately. Like, am I not trusting you by not giving you more money? Like, what do I do?
Yeah, this one is.
And does God always trust us?
Yeah, and so that's the one that I actually focused on a lot more. Was God's trust for us, and that allowing us to trust others. And it took me a while. I sat there racking my brain because I really wanted. Full transparency, I really wanted it to work, being like, we love others this way and God loves us this way. Yeah. And I was like, nailed it. Trust. How does God trust us? Right?
Sure.
And I was really hung up on it. And I was like, I really want this to work. Yeah. But then it clicked. He allows us to bear his name. He lets us be his representatives here on earth. And I have seen people abuse that trust. Yeah. And do things in his name that are not his desire. And he doesn't immediately smite. He doesn't step in. He doesn't immediately like destroy. Like, I mean, I've heard countless times people talk about, well, that's only a couple Christians. Not all of us are like that. Like there's this idea of, especially in our culture where people are like, they have this view of the church and who God is based off people misusing God's name. Yeah. And I don't know if that means I should let people misuse my... Yeah. But like that level of trust that God lets me represent him to others, that's a lot of trust that I don't deserve that he gives me. Because I know that I've failed at that before. Yeah. I can't think of a specific example. And also, I work here, so I don't want to get fired. But But like, I know that there for sure have been times. I mean, I started, working with youth when I myself was a youth, and so I know probably a couple of my first couple sermons probably had some heresy in there. Sure, if not a lot. So, like, that trust that God has given me, even to like speak with any semblance of authority on what His Word says, is an insane amount of trust. Yeah, that we have His Word written for us to interpret on our essentially on our own. I mean, with others, please interpret with others. Yeah. But that's an insane level of trust He shows us, and that makes it really hard for me to then say, well, yeah, but if they've done it to me 20 times, I don't know. It's again, does trust mean that you have to keep giving them money? Sure. Yeah. Right? Like maybe you're not going to trust them with money, but you still trust that I don't know, they're not going to kill you. I don't know where the level goes because this one it's a really sticky one. It's really hard. I know that I trust my wife. Yeah. Absolutely. 100%. Yeah. I trust my sisters even when they mess up or I mess up. Certainly. That trust doesn't go away. Even if someone has done something against me and I'm like, man, that really sucked. It doesn't, I mean, this could just be because I'm an extrovert who loves people.
Yeah.
But like that doesn't make me immediately write them off as if they're just not worthy of talking to anymore. And it's trust. I mean, when we think of the word trust, like there's so many like implicit things in that of like, but I don't know if it has to be all of the things related to trust to be what you could call trust.
Yeah.
Because like, I don't know, we put a lot of trust in the people on the road with us.
Sure.
Like we're driving 2-ton vehicles at 70 miles an hour,
Yeah.
flying down paved roads. Like there's a lot of trust that the person in oncoming traffic isn't going to pull a wheel.
Yeah.
There's a lot of trust that someone's going to actually stop at a red light. There's a lot of trust that we show. And, you know, maybe it's not, I'm going to continue to give you money. Like I'm not going to trust you with money, but maybe that trust that shows love is like, hey, I'm not going to trust you with money anymore, but you can still come to my house. You can still be with me. I'm going to trust you physically. And again, maybe if someone has physically like had an altercation with you, maybe you can't trust them in your presence, but maybe the trust comes somewhere else where maybe, okay, I can't have you in the same room as me, but I'll send you a letter once a month so that you know you're still like a person who matters and who I care about. And I don't know, it gets especially sticky when it hits real world, real danger issues.
Yeah.
And when any of these hit real world, real danger issues, I think there definitely is a precedent set through the wisdom literature to use wisdom. You know, if someone shouldn't have your address, don't give them your address. And if they try to tell you, well, love always trusts, be like, no, you're not going to have my address.
People have to appeal.
Then make them appeal to, well, also love needs to be patient, kind, and focus on me, and you don't do that. So please don't weaponize this.
Yes, please don't keep a record of wrongs.
Yeah. Hey, I did actually at one point think, man, if you interpreted these in a specific way, if you noodled them around just right, you could have a very effective cult.
Sure.
Where you could get people to give you a lot of money and give you a lot, which is, again, a level of trust that God gives us, his words. And man, when it comes to the love always trusts, I think when you hit a real world, real danger situation, use conventional wisdom in tandem with, if you can still somehow show this love. But as I've said before, I don't know if we're trusting enough. Like in general, with most people around us. And I know that there are people out there who are evil and who do evil things to other people.
Yeah.
But as a general whole, I think we could use more trust for one another, even in just like that they're going to stop at a red light, or you know, they're not going to rob me in the parking lot, or you know, there's a level where, again, we have to ask, is this for comfortability or for genuine safety?
Yeah.
And if it's for genuine safety, yes, put up those, like, keep yourself safe, because I mean, it's that conventional wisdom again of, if you're not safe, you know, if you're taken out of the equation, then you can no longer show love to the other people that you're showing love to.
Yeah.
And so, you know, don't let one person like hurt you so much that you can't show love to others. And so if it's for genuine, real safety, yes, absolutely. Big fan of boundaries.
Yeah.
But I'm a fan of boundaries for safety, not for comfortability. And I find that the people that we most see as maybe being like, oh man, they're really hard to be patient with, I don't really want to be their friend right now, sometimes turn out to be your best friends down the line, because you were the one who showed them God's love. You were the one who actually was there for them when everyone else thought, oh, they're too annoying, or oh, they're too whatever, and I left them alone. Yeah. Then down the line, I mean, some of my best friends, when we grew up, they came into youth group and people were like, they're loud and annoying. We're not going to hang out with them. And I was just like, hi, nice to meet you. And now they're some of my closest friends to this day.
Yeah.
Because I didn't set a boundary for, and it was uncomfortable for a couple years while they took time to mature and
Yeah, exactly.
and learn how to like talk with people in different ways.
Yeah.
And they're now some of my best friends.
Yeah.
And so I have a real heart for setting boundaries, but only for safety, or like for safety, not just for, well, I'm a little uncomfortable.
Yeah.
So I'm going to put up this bubble. Because of all of those ones here, the fact that he repeats, like, basically don't be selfish, like 4 times, I think that's important.
Yeah.
And that, like, love is a selfless action and a heart that is fueled by God's love himself. So there is so much more to this.
Yeah.
We got to half of them, I think.
Yeah. We kind of got to half of them. A lot of them we skimmed, pretty quickly.
Yeah.
And there's the whole latter section.
And then there's the whole last section
Yeah.
about being a child
Right.
and then being an adult. And
Yep. And all of that. And the greatest, love being greater than faith and all that.
Yeah.
But those are conversations for another time.
yeah,
So I think we kind of touched a little bit on all of them though. So real quick. I think that's that's a challenging note to end on.
Yeah.
Kind of an opening. There's none of these that seem as hard as always trust to me. Like, just because of how impossible that's like, part of it is like, what does it even mean to trust?
yeah,
Right. And the challenge on that is huge. And family, I hope the challenge of all of these is like felt in your heart and in your life. Like, the bar, you said, is very high.
The bar is very high.
Yeah. And we all have room we could grow and to be more loving,
Yeah.
as this describes.
Yeah, every time I read through this list, another one punches me in the gut.
Yeah.
And it's different ones at different times, just depending on what I'm going through. Because sometimes I'm like, man, I'm feeling so good about myself. Love is not self-seeking. Dang it. On Tuesday,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Daniel, for coming on and
Thank you
walking
for
through
having
this with us. Real quick, as I do every episode, can you once again at least share kind of where people can find you around Morningstar?
Yeah, the South Auditorium. That's basically where I live. I work with the middle school, so Sundays after second service, I'll be around in the South Lobby, South Auditorium area. Come in, play a little bit of Foursquare.
Sure.
With the middle schoolers,
Yeah.
they'll destroy you.
Probably.
And that's basically where I hang out. Also on Thursdays for High Life is also South Auditorium. So
There you go.
I'm kind of in that half of the church most of the time.
Awesome. And you got a handy dandy name tag on right now.
I do.
Video, so no one can get you confused for those of you watching the YouTube. But awesome. Thank you so much, Daniel.
Thank you.
Family, thank you so much for listening. I hope this episode blesses you and challenges you to know God's love more and let it transform you more. All right. We love you, family. Until next time.
Thanks for tuning in to the Morning Star Podcast. Join us again next time as we display God's handiwork and encourage you to live a Jesus-first life.